Okay, John Wertz here, Montgomery County Tea Party. We are here with Jon Bouche. It's November 1st on Saturday. With me is Kendra Yamaguchi, Bob Bagley, and Larry Rogers. Good morning.
Good to be here. Thank you guys for having me.
Thanks for coming in. Thanks for answering the questionnaire. As we discussed, and you're familiar with the process, what we'll do is start off with up to a 5-minute elevator speech, if you'd like, and then we'll get into question and answers, go around the table until we either run out of questions or about 45 minutes, and then we'll close up with a 5-minute closing. So if you'd like, go ahead and start off by telling us why you're running for this position, what you hope to achieve.
Well, thank you, John. My name is Jon Bouche. I'm running for Texas House District 16. That is the area between Grimes County, San Jacinto County, Walker County, and kind of north of 1488. I've lived in Montgomery County since, well, for about 34 years. I've been in Texas over 40 years. I'm a graduate of Sam Houston State University. I have a BA in Law Enforcement and Police Science. My wife Janine and I have been married for 37 years. I'm the former founder and chairman of the Lone Star Christian Chamber of Commerce. I also started a group, a couple of us called Love Street Alliance, where we volunteer to take music into the Texas Children's Hospital and the Shriners Hospital. I lead worship in churches around the area, so very involved in the community and volunteer work. I was the Volunteer of the Year for the Republican Party of Texas not so long ago. And I've been politically involved for over a decade now in local politics, first running for a precinct chair position in 2018. I did run for the county chair position in 2020, which was a real eye-opening experience, which I'm sure we can talk about today. And so I've been delegates at the state convention. I've served as a chair of the subcommittee on criminal and civil justice at the state convention. I've served on the rules committee, and I've also served on the platform committee at the state convention. Currently, I am the vice president of the Lone Star Groundwater Conservation District, and I served 3 terms as a vice chairman of the Montgomery County Republican Party. And on a personal level, I'm a 5-star realtor with Houston Association of Realtors, specializing in probate, real estate, and senior market. And I am a founder of Bouche Realty Group.
Okay, great. Thanks for that overview, and appreciate all your service over the years, to the county. Just in starting off, and one of the first questions was, what are the 3 main reasons? Why are the 3 main reasons you run for the office? Your first was to restore the Texas House to intended Republican form of governance, a lot of which we have done in this county and been successful at. Eliminate the current centralized authoritarian structure, where we put in a steering committee instead of a one-person county chair rule. The third thing on there was, the second was election integrity, and then the third thing was to put us on a path to eliminate property taxes. And we addressed that in a lot of the questions that we had in the overview. What does that look like to you? To eliminate property taxes? How do we get around? How do we fund all the government services without property taxes or a severely reduced amount?
Well, the first step towards eliminating property taxes in Texas is to have the will to do it, which we have not had the will to do. It's an $81 billion revenue source, a very stable revenue source in Texas. So our politicians have not really wanted to touch that. But Texas is one of the top, recently, we're the second fastest growing in terms of population state in the United States behind Florida. Over a sustained time, it's been Texas, Utah, and Idaho that are the fastest growing in terms of percentage of population. So there is certainly a revenue growth going on there, and there is an opportunity to allocate that revenue in ways that are meaningful to reducing property taxes in Texas. It's just no one's really had the will to do that for a long time, and that's been very disappointing. Right now we have a tax surplus in a government rainy day fund in excess of $50 billion in Texas. And that's over taxation really, is what that is. And that shows you that we have a problem between what we're budgeting and what we're spending. So in some areas, we're being more responsible in cutting back spending, but we're still raising that revenue. And instead of directing it towards property tax relief, we're sitting on it for other projects. And it's always been the bane of my existence in government, is to see when, like, Montgomery County's growing at 4%, and you guys have probably heard me say this before, hey, we're growing at 4%, so that's an opportunity to get things done in a meaningful way and save people on taxes. It doesn't mean we got 4% more revenue to spend every year to year, which unfortunately that's what happens. So the way we would have to do that, if you're asking me in a broad sense how to eliminate property taxes, I don't think you're gonna do it in one cycle. I think you're gonna have to offset that 81 billion by increasing the 43 billion or so in sales taxes by some incremental amount. You're gonna have to look at the severance taxes from oil and gas, which are about 12 to 13 billion, the last estimates I saw, increase those. You may have to impose some sort of luxury tax to offset some of that. But mostly you're gonna have to cut spending and take advantage of that revenue growth and allocate that in a way to reduce those property taxes. But again, you gotta have the will to do that, and I do have the will to do that. I will push for that. And over time, you will eventually eliminate those property taxes and keep Texans from having to rent their home from the government, which I think has just been a disgrace for a long time.
Okay.
I know you were at the Texas Capitol the day of the speaker vote. Would you like to give an explanation as to what happened that day? And had you been a representative then, what actions would you have taken to change the situation or influence it?
Well, by the time we got to the speaker vote, the horse was already out of the barn, and I try and get to the root of problems and solve problems. So what needs to happen now is some reform in the way the House Republican Caucus interacts with the Republican Party of Texas to put accountability in, so we don't have 26 Republicans walk down the hall and join the Democrats and make a deal. This has been going on since Joe Strauss was Speaker of the House for well over a decade. So what I would have done is I would have voted with the House Republican Caucus person, which was Cook. What happened that day, we got to the Capitol, we all went in, a lot of our people had their shirts on, said ban Democrat chairs. We were prepared to go into the gallery when we found out that my opponent, who was the administrative chair of the committee for House Administration, had sent out an internal memo saying that only people with tickets can get in the gallery. Of course, nobody knew there were tickets, so you couldn't get in the gallery. And for those who were fortunate enough to get a ticket to get to the gallery, when they got to the door, they were told, you can't come in here, you have to take your shirt off or turn it inside out. Well, that's a violation of our First Amendment rights. This is the people's house, but they turned it into their house for that day. So I thought that was horrible that they did that. You had members going down to my opponent's office to talk to him, to implore him to support the Republican caucus candidate, and he eventually got annoyed with everyone, shooed him out of his office, and then put a guard at his door, which he denies doing now, but we have pictures of it, and there are people that saw it. So I thought that was horrible, it was disrespectful to his constituents, and it was really disappointing.
Thank you.
Okay. Bob?
You put in here on your questionnaire that you promised to abide by the Republican Party platform. Is there anything in the platform that you disagree with? And are there any changes that you would make?
Well, it's a fair question, because how many planks are there in the platform now? It changes around 300 now, something like that?
Over 300.
Over 300. That changes. We try to pare it down, and they have combined planks with one another, so it's still a little over 300 ideas. There are some things I disagree with in the platform at times. Right off the top of my head, taxpayer-funded lobbying, you've heard me speak about before. I think that's a trap for conservatives, but they've got us in this mindset, we need to ban taxpayer-funded lobbying. But I would remind you, the things that are most egregious to conservatives are not lobbied for with taxpayer-funded lobbying money. It's outside sources buying politicians to then lobby for those things. So imagine yourself going to your city council and saying, I don't want that dog food factory built behind my house, and them saying, sorry, we can't do anything about that, no taxpayer funded lobbying. So I think that's a trap. I think there's a way to get around that with a referendum that goes out to the voters to say, do you want this dog food factory? Do you want us to fight against it, and have a very narrow scope for the lobbying for the person you send to Austin to do that? That would be one thing that I would change in the. So is there everybody at the convention going to agree on all 300 plus platform planks? It's just never going to happen. And I think that's another trap that people get in. Do you support the platform or not? Well, yeah, in broad strokes I do. But are there things that we should really think a little more deeply about so we don't trap ourselves in that platform? And I think that's something to consider. And I do look at all those things pretty carefully.
Okay, Larry?
On the questionnaire, the question was, will you submit a bill eliminating the ability of a member of the Texas legislature to change their vote after the official vote is recorded? And you said yes. Could you elaborate a little bit on that?
My opponent changed his vote 81 times. The problem we have is a bill will come up that's controversial. A member of the House will go down, he'll vote a certain way, say he votes yes on it, and the bill passes. And then realizing he's going to get heat from his constituents back home, he goes to the desk and says, I intended to vote no. So that way when he's challenged in front of a meeting, he'll go, well, the record shows officially I voted no. But the record does not show officially because the vote that counted was the one you cast on the floor. I think our House reps should read the bills and understand the bills and the implications of the bills and vote based on the merits of the bill and how it benefits their constituents. I don't think we have that. A great example of that is school choice. You had Donald Trump call in to the House and say, if anybody votes for school choice, I'm going to endorse them. That bill could have said we're going to line up all the third graders and shoot them. It didn't matter what the bill said at that point. They were all going to vote for it. And so they sold their vote. Okay, now if you get heat for that vote, then they go, well, you can see the record shows that I changed my vote. So I think it's wrong for them to be able to change their vote that way and then come back to their constituents and mislead them in that way. I think if you want to file something expresses that I didn't read the bill and I didn't vote the right way because I didn't read and understand the bill, I think your constituents should know that, and they should make the decision if you do that a lot of times, whether you're the right guy that they're sending to Austin.
Thank you.
Okay. Every 2 years, the Republican Party has a convention. And it's the largest political convention in the world. There's roughly about 8,000 people at this convention. And it's a week's worth of activity. It sets the direction for the party. Out of that come 8 legislative priorities for the legislature to implement, basically. And yet, they never seem to get around to it. And I guess this is kind of a two-faced question. They never get around to them because they're taking so much time off. They're only working like 2 or 3 days out of the week, when they're taking off Thursday evening and coming back on Tuesday. What can you do probably is going to take a group of people to stop that practice. I guess it depends on who the speaker is, but I think it needs to be a group deal to shut that practice down and take care of the people's business, number one. And number two, how do you get the legislative priorities that 8,000 people have voted on, whether they were for it or against it?
I understand your question to be, how do we get the legislative priorities passed? I mean, you touched on a lot of things there, John.
Yep.
First of all, I would encourage anybody watching this video to get involved in convention and be a delegate. Because if you have the wrong people influencing those legislative priorities, they may not be what you hope they are. There are some things that we missed this last session. Like, I thought one of the legislative priorities should have been that the House Republican caucus candidate is the one that is supported by the entire caucus. And there should be penalties and sanctions for those who do not support that. So that should have been a legislative priority. So there are some legislative priorities that get overlooked and things get shifted around because the people who are the most vocal and who serve on those committees get their way, and it's not necessarily the will of the Republicans across Texas. So what you've heard me say when I ran for county chair, I would like to bring our legislators in before the county party prior to the legislative session and review the legislative priorities with them to make sure that they all understand it. And then at the end of session, when we keep in touch with them during the session, we pray for them, we support them, we follow up, we track the bills as we do in the party here, as you know. And at the close of the legislative session, you bring them back in and say, okay, let's see how we did on the legislative priorities. Because if they don't think people are paying attention, they're not gonna do it. So that's the way you do that at that level. But again, it all begins with getting involved in the convention and making sure that the legislative priorities that come out of the convention are reflective of the legislative priorities of Republicans across Texas, which is not always the case. I mean, most of them are, but it's not always the case. There's a couple that get in there that you go, why are these in here and why are they so high? And you have some that you wonder, why aren't they there at all?
Right. Okay, thanks, Kendra.
Do you believe that parents are the chief decision makers over their children and that they have the right to refuse vaccinations or inappropriate materials being taught to their kids in school?
Of course I do. I do believe that, and I also understand that there are some parents out there that shouldn't be parents. And so that's something that we need to be mindful of. Growing up in New Orleans, I saw a lot of these kids that were, I hate to call them throwaway kids, but that's what they were. You know, my mom was a teacher in New Orleans, and these kids would come to school in 3rd grade and say, I can't wait to get old. I'm old enough to have my babies on my own so I can have my own money. So it's not a matter of, you can't say every parent's a great parent is where I'm going. So the welfare of the child is really important to me. That's why I am pro-life from conception on. The value of the life of that child means a lot. But in general terms, yes, I think the parents should have that ability. Our schools are set up in a way that they protect teachers, and they're very left-leaning and have been evolving that way for a long time. And again, if we're not involved in our kids' education, if we're not going to the meetings, if we're not following up on the curriculum, we have no one to blame but ourselves. So I do go to the schools. I have spoken with the Fellowship of Christian Athletes at schools and sports teams. I've spoken in front of the Young Americans for Liberty, the Republican clubs in the high schools. I've made a real effort to reach the younger people to get ahead of that while they're in those indoctrination tanks. And I'm sad to report, and I know some of you at the table know this, some of the small R Republicans in this county have called those schools and said, don't have Jon Bouche there. So it's not that they want to go reach the youth, they just don't want conservatives like me doing it.
Thank you.
Bob?
During this last session, we had a number of Democrats that decided to leave the state rather than show up and represent their constituents and vote on bills. What's your opinion of that? And there were things that were brought up, they were gonna get fined or they were gonna lose their positions, and nothing took place. How did you feel about that?
What a travesty. I heard my opponent the other day, and this relates to that directly. Somebody stood up at the Wood Forest Republican event and asked him a question. How come you didn't pass a ban on taxpayer-funded lobbying? And he said, we just didn't have the votes. Remember, it takes 100 people to pass legislation. That was what we call in the political circles a lie. That is not true. It takes 100 people to have a quorum, which is what you're talking about. The Democrats broke quorum. For example, we passed school choice with 86 votes. So it is just factually, it is just a lie to say it takes 100. So the Democrats that fled and deprived us of a quorum, of the 100-person quorum, they broke the rules. But here's the problem. The way the rules are set up, there's nothing you can do to them. So when the governor said, I'm gonna remove you from office, I'm like, he can't. He's not. This is just a bunch of saber rattling. So what do I think should have happened with that? I thought when they got back, they should have been removed from the committees. They should have been fined. That's what should have happened, but remember how we started this session. We had 26 Republicans, including my opponent, go down the hall and make deals with Democrats so that they could do things like this and, you know, stop Republican legislation from getting through. So when that happened, I knew nothing was going to happen. And the most insulting part of it all, as you remember, when the Democrats got back, we went through 2 more special sessions, and on the last day, the last minute of the last special session, they said, we have now strengthened the rules against these quorum breakers. We're really going to get them next time. Well, that's insulting because you didn't enforce any of the rules you currently had in place. And now those rules that you just strengthened are dead as soon as you gavel out that day, and you have to adopt new rules in 2 years. So again, taking advantage of the lack of sophistication of the voters is what they're doing by stating we need 100 people to pass a bill, and then stating we're going to now pass these new rules that they know they're not going to enforce.
All right, thanks, sir. Larry?
The questionnaire, we had a question that stated, what have you done or will you do to prevent the extract Common Core, CRT, SEL, and the IB from the school systems? Would you elaborate on that a little bit?
Well, you've seen me testify before the CISD board about getting the pornography out of schools. I've been there to testify against a lot of the things that you've mentioned. But mostly we worked hard to put a school board in place that would prevent our kids from being exposed to that. So we did the last cycle. We elected all those people to the office. Unfortunately, we find out we have really 3 that believe what they say and another 4 that are just kind of out there in the wind, you know, for whatever reason. But that's how you do it. You can't expect the state government and your legislator to control those things. Your control has to be at the local level because they are closest to our kids and the teachers in the classroom.
So as you're aware from being involved in the party has commissioned a Doge committee to look into the county government, and that Doge committee has gotten lukewarm response to that, if not outright ignoring requests for information now. What are your thoughts about Doge in the county? I know there's a candidate that's running for comptroller that wants to Doge the state government. I don't know how much power they might have in doing that, but as a legislator, is that something that you would be willing to push as a lawmaker to get that done, and even to the point of going with an outside auditor to audit the state? And how have you given any thought to that? And if so, what do you think that looks like?
I think a Doge committee is a great mechanism to use for what I've already discussed. We're going to have to be fiscally more responsible. We're going to have to get rid of waste, fraud, and abuse if we're going to be able to eliminate property taxes in Texas. We're going to have to, reallocate that $50 billion in emergency fund and tax surplus in a way that's meaningful to reducing that. And a Doge committee would be very helpful in identifying ways to save money. So, yes, I'm very much on board with that. But the Doge committee can't just be a committee without teeth. It's going to have the support of the governor. It's going to have the support of the Senate and the House. Otherwise, they're just another group out there yelling suggestions at legislators who are deaf when it comes to projects that they want. So it's going to have some teeth behind it. And you know how shy I am. I'm certainly going to go to the mic, and I'm certainly going to fight for those things.
So do you think it has to go to the governor's level? What if he doesn't support that? What if he's either neutral about it or cool to it, like our county judge appears to be right now?
Well, John, the way, and I just had this talk with a member of the House, the way that we get around things is we go to the people. My election is all about that. because ultimately the people have the power. But if you don't have the ability to effectively to communicate directly with the people and get them on your side, it doesn't matter what committee you put in place. If the governor's not gonna support it and the people aren't behind you, you're just making a lot of noise. So we've been very successful in Montgomery County by getting the people behind us, as you know. And that's what I plan on doing in Austin. I will have a very transparent, the time I serve there, you know, I will be the guy out there making the noise. I will say, hey, this is what this really means. Here's why it's important.
Okay, thank you.
Can you talk about your views on the gambling, the hot topic of gambling that, you know, may be possibly happening in the state of Texas and why you do or don't support it?
Okay, when they put the lottery in, they said this would solve our problem with funding education, which if you're funding education, you know, with gambling money, you can certainly get rid of property taxes, right? Did that happen? See, it's always a promise to get the thing in, and once they get it in, then they do what they want. Now, my experience with this is a lot different than many of yours, because I grew up in New Orleans. I remember them pushing for gambling in New Orleans as a young man growing up, saw it over and over, and finally they broke through and they got the nose of the camel under the tent, and they said, we'll just have riverboat gambling. Very nostalgic. Come on, John, we had riverboats with gambling on them. This is a New Orleans thing, we gotta do this. So they put the riverboat gambling in, and pretty soon the riverboat was docked. And then they said, well, it's docked, you might as well have a building. The next thing you know, you have a casino in the middle of New Orleans. And 3 years later, New Orleans is the murder capital of the United States. So all the stuff that goes along with that revenue you're gonna get from gambling, it's a bad deal. It's not worth it. It will destroy Texas. It will destroy Montgomery County. I am steadfastly against gambling, and I will fight to keep it out of Texas.
Do you know where your opponent stands on gambling?
I know he is probably gonna be funded by the Sands Casino lobby again, just like the other side is. Every election cycle, the Sands Casino is mailing into Montgomery County, trying to defeat us.
Okay, thank you. Bob?
Close to a third of our schools are being attended by illegal aliens. Yet we don't have a number because we're not allowed to track them or to state, for them to state if they're here legally or not. Our education continues to go downhill. Where 75% of our graduates from high school going to Lone Star College have to go through tutoring before they can start a year of school. What can be done through the legislature to change these things?
You close the border to start. That would solve a lot of problems with the uncompensated medical care in our emergency room, with our you know, all the burden on the backs of taxpayers, including the schools like you talk about. Whenever they talk about, you know, Texas has the lowest per capita per student or whatever. Well, no, not really. We just have a bunch of illegals in the school, and that's really skewing the numbers, right? So because of the Plyler case, I don't know if you remember, Pete Wilson was governor of California. He had the same crisis there back when Clinton was in office, and he said, you know, we have all these illegals crowding up our schools and using up all our services on the backs of the taxpaying Californians. We need to get them out of the state. And the federal government stepped in and said, we're gonna sue you. And they cited the Plyler case, which says that the state has to provide these basic needs to these illegals, including, you know, food, shelter, and that sort of thing. So I think we need to revisit the Plyler case, but I think the first thing we should do is to shut the border down. It would solve a lot of these problems. And until you do that, the educational outcomes you're gonna have with children with English as a second language coming in and the school curriculum having to be brought down to the level to where they can understand, you're gonna continue to have poor educational outcomes here until we fix that.
Larry?
One of the questions is, on the questionnaire, how many terms do you plan to serve?
2.
Could you, I've heard that before, and then they wind up serving.
How long have you known me, Larry? When I tell you 2, do you believe I mean 2?
I believe you need to.
I have heard the Austin capital referred to as a swamp. I'm gonna tell you, I grew up adjacent to the swamp in the alluvial lands of Louisiana. The swamp is a beautiful thing teeming with life. That is a sewer up there. I am not going up there to make friends. I am going up there to reform it and to fight and fight and fight and to get it done. I know how to fix it. Am I naive enough to believe that one of 150 reps can fix it all? Maybe not, but what I can tell you is that I will have a lot more voters behind me understanding what's going on by the time I leave after 2 terms. And part of my time up there, you might have heard me speak the other night, when I go, I'm bringing somebody with me who I'm gonna groom to take in, to come in after me when I'm gone. So I'm not just gonna serve 2 terms and then say, okay, you guys got this now, and then let somebody step into the void that has no idea what they're doing and is unprepared. We can't afford to do that. We need to be smarter. I think every legislator across Texas needs to be grooming their replacement right now so that they understand what's going on up there. That's what I plan to do. I will serve 2 terms.
Very good.
All right. Let me get this timer situated here. Okay, on the question, how should the Texas House Speaker be elected? You said, I believe the majority party should first meet and through a fair and orderly process, select a nominee who then receives unified support on the House floor. That is, I believe, the same as what the Republican caucus was this last go around, right?
That's what they're supposed to do, yes.
Yeah, and so basically, kind of in a nutshell, can you explain what went wrong? I know there's some numbers involved in there, and there was some misinformation put out, I think, by some, and maybe you can clarify that a little bit as to what really went down, if you recall. I know it's been a while yet, and how to stop that from happening again.
Well, it all began really way back when Joe Strauss was over a decade ago. Was it when did he come in, 2013? Oh, 2009 maybe? He started in 2009,
I think.
Okay. Joe Strauss, 12 Republicans, went down the hall, got with the Democrats, said, you guys don't have the majority, but if us 12 join you, you will, and we can elect Speaker of the House, and if y'all all vote for Joe Strauss, then we'll make sure you guys get, something this legislative session. If you don't, then, we're gonna go with the Republicans, and you guys are gonna be out of luck. And once they got the Democrats in line, then they went back to the Republicans and said, now you guys are gonna do what we say, because we got the votes, and if you don't go along, you're gonna be, you're gonna have a bad session. That's been going on forever now. That's been going on since then. The last conservative Speaker of the House we had was Tom Craddock. So how do you fix it? How do you thwart a handful of Republicans who are so greedy for power, who have such a rapacious hunger for power, that they're willing to do anything and sell everybody out? How do you do that? Well, the way you do that now, one other thing I would mention, within the House Republican caucus rules, they protect each other. The swamp protects itself. Rule 708, 709 says you can't work against a sitting House member, okay? So the way you fix that is you put one rule in the House Republican caucus rule. It says if you don't support the House Republican caucus nominee, whoever it is, then you're expelled from the caucus and you lose all those protections. And immediately the state party and the House Republican caucus would mail into all your constituents and say, hey, this guy abandoned you, he joined the Democrats, you'll need to find somebody else to run, and then let them try to get reelected. Again, you return the power to the constituents. That's how you fix that.
Okay, thank you. Kendra?
So, talking about school choice, what is your opinion of school choice? Would you have supported school choice as a representative?
Well, that's a really
What's your
broad
pros and
question.
cons?
Would you support the Inflation Reduction Act? Knowing what you know now? Would you support the Affordable Care Act, knowing that we're about to spend billions of dollars to keep it quote unquote affordable? No, you see, the name of bills often belie their intent and their effect. So that was another one of those trap votes. John, do you support school choice? Well, yes, I support school choice. Absolutely, I support school choice, and I would tell you how to do school choice where it's actually school choice. When that bill was passed, when President Trump said, I will support anybody who votes for the school choice bill, I had a legislator call me and said, John, I voted for the school choice bill. And I said, can you tell me why you did that? He goes, because it rescues 100,000 students from failing public schools, John. That's why, $10,000 per student. I said, wow, that's great. So you're telling me you didn't read the bill? And he goes, no, that's what it does. I go, no, that's not what it does. Go read the bill. Top of page 25 of that bill, it says $30,000 for special ed kids. So the math immediately doesn't work. There's not anything about $10,000 per student in the final draft of the bill. So you didn't read the bill. Not only that, I know from researching this carefully, for decades they've been trying to, through the court system, gain access and control over private school and homeschool curriculum. And the leftists have not been able to do that. That has been the Fort Apache for conservatives, holding out on those things. But then, now what they've done is, from an administrative standpoint, they've gone into those schools and said, these private schools and homeschools, hey, we'll give you money if you go along with our program, and now administratively, you'll just have to report this, and this, and now there's those strings attached. So administratively they did what they were unable to do through the court systems for decades. It was a mistake. There is a way to do school choice the right way, and when we have more time, I'm happy to talk about it.
Thank you.
All right, Bob?
With the illegal immigration that's taken place in this country, we're seeing places like Dearborn, Michigan, that are overrun by Islam. And we're seeing more and more of that happening here in Texas as well. What can be done in the legislature to stop the prayer that's going out over the streets and throughout the communities that, we our Constitution allows us to have our freedom of religion, but that's an imposing a religion on everybody, whether you like it or not.
Well, a couple of things. First of all, there are noise ordinances in these neighborhoods that should handle the quote-unquote calls for prayer and stuff. That's number one. That shouldn't be allowed anywhere in those neighborhoods. Yes, we have freedom of religion in the country, and I agree with that 100%. But the issue is when you have a religion that's government is intertwined within its religion, and by practicing the religion on American soil, they are imposing their governance here, which conflicts with the U.S. Constitution. I think every one of those people should be deported that tries to put Sharia law in place. It is incompatible with the Constitution and of the American way of life, so it needs to go away. So I hope that answers your question. The call to prayer, they're blasting through the neighborhoods, should be handled by local noise ordinances, whether they were playing Ozzy Osbourne music or church music or whatever. It shouldn't be allowed. But they're trying to conflate these things, that if you don't let us blare these calls to prayer, then you're violating our religion. Incorrect. That's not correct. And we need to not let them trap us in that argument.
We're seeing it as close as Houston, so.
Yeah.
Thanks.
All right, Larry?
My last question had to do with term limits, and another.
Still two.
One of the questions was, do you support or oppose implementing term limits for all elected office? And you said you support that. Elaborate.
I signed the petition with U.S. term limits also. I'm endorsed by them. I think you guys have known me long enough to know that when I tell you something, you're going to see it happen. And I support term limits. I will serve 2 terms. And I will serve 2 terms. I will do the job for 2 terms. I will not just go up there and mark time. They will know I'm there, and you'll see it. Again, I'm not going there to make friends.
Do you think 2 terms is all any of the?
Well, when you say 2 terms, I mean, keep in mind that some offices have 6-year term and some have 2-year term. So take, for example, I get up there and I'm up there 2 terms, and then my constituents come to me and say, hey man, we're right on the edge of fixing this major problem and eliminating property taxes in Texas, and you're the guy on the front lines. Are you really gonna step back now? The answer is gonna be yes, because I've already been working with whoever here that's willing to step right into my place, and I'm gonna work behind the scenes to help them. And, oh yeah, and by the way, we're recruiting this other guy over here, this other lady over here who's gonna come in after this next one. That's how our government's supposed to work. Okay, 2 terms should be plenty. 2 terms, I heard Jonathan Stickland talk about this. He said nobody should really serve here more than 2 terms, because no matter how much character you have or how good you are, you're gonna get corrupted. That's how they are. That's just how the Austin swamp works. And I'm gonna serve 2 terms. I'm gonna make sure somebody's able to come in behind me, and we're gonna get some meaningful stuff done. And we're gonna get meaningful stuff done because we're gonna get the people involved. That's what you have to do.
Great, thank you.
Okay, we have just over 5 minutes. In the role of public education relating to parental rights, you said parents should have the right to move their child from any public school
Yes.
to another public school. How about beyond that? Should it, just a second, let me set this clock here. There we go. How about other schools like charter schools, private school, homeschool, that sort of thing?
Charter school is still a public school.
And would you have the money follow the
Yes.
child? Okay.
Yes, what's missing from our public school system right now, it's a great question, is competition. Right now, the way the system is designed is your child is zoned to a certain school, and they have to go there no matter what. The only way out of that school, and I hear conservatives say this all the time, if you don't like it, send your kid to private school or homeschool. Well, parents, not every parent can afford that. Inflation has been so bad and the system is so broken right now that you need 2 parents working in most cases, and one of them can't stay home and homeschool the kids, and they can't afford to send them to a private school. So they're trapped. So when you go to the school, they really don't care because they know that revenue's coming in no matter what. Now imagine for a second changing the game where you said, like right here where we're sitting, there's probably 8 high schools within 10 miles of here. Imagine if you told parents, you can put your kid in any school in the area that you can get them to, and the money's gonna follow the child. Do you think there'd be competition between these schools to do better, to attract these students? You betcha. That's not there right now. They don't care. When you go in, they're just like, well, okay, like when my kid went to Oak Ridge High School, I had to schedule a meeting with them because they had a classroom where there was fighting and the teacher would sit there and read a book and nobody taught anything. It was a math class. My wife, who's a certified teacher, went up to audit the class and witnessed this. It took us months to even get a meeting. When they showed up, 9 people showed up and they tried to tell me my kid was lying. And my wife said, I witnessed it. And then the next thing they said, well, wait a minute, you weren't supposed to be in the class. So that system protects itself too. We need to fix that. Mm-hmm. And I think the competition is the answer. That's what we do for our economy. That's what we should do for our kids. If we had competition in the public school system where they were competing for those tax dollars, you'd see a lot better outcomes. I believe that.
Amen. Okay, Kendra?
Across the state of Texas, I'm seeing more and more teachers and staff of public schools being picked up for preying on kids, arrested for whether it's sexual abuse or abuse of any kind. I'm just wondering if there's anything that you could do or would do to have better vetting for our staff and our teachers in the public schools. Yeah.
Oh, if I could see into the hearts of men.
Mm-hmm.
Oh. I mean, we can do all the vetting we want to do on that. I don't think you're ever gonna fully prevent all that. You just never know. I mean, this isn't something new. I grew up in the Archdiocese in New Orleans. I mean, the Catholic priests were doing this. This was a private school. This is a human problem. This is not necessarily a teacher problem. But yeah, it is, I think it's becoming, I don't think it ever didn't exist. I just think with the technology right now and the investigative methods, the cybercrime, the computer forensics programs, that we're detecting a lot more of it now. I think we're seeing it more. In those cases where we catch them, I think we should obviously prosecute them to the fullest extent of the law, but more importantly, ban them from ever being around kids again in public schools. Right now, they move these kids around to the different schools, and move these teachers around, hide them basically. And I think there should be severe consequences for administrators that do that.
All right, Bob,
No, I'm done.
Larry. Okay, looks like, and I'm finished. If you wanna take up to 5 minutes on your closing, and then we'll, wrap it up.
Well, there's a lot to talk about. Obviously, it's way beyond 5 minutes, but I could have easily just sat home and done my real estate business and not run for office. But it is a calling. I know a lot of people say that, but it really is a calling. And when my wife said, "John, I wish you'd run for higher office so you can help these kids," that really struck a chord with me, especially from my wife, who's very apolitical and really kind of wanted me out of politics. And so, she's a good, godly woman that supports me, and I'm so grateful for her support, because I wouldn't be doing this without her. We're very blessed here in Montgomery County. When I came into this, the first time I ran, I was very naive. In 2018, I ran against a 34-year incumbent. I was told I would never beat that person. I beat them soundly. In 2020, when I ran for county chair, I was shocked to see John Cornyn drive down here, work with Kevin Brady, and they even flew Carl Rove in to work against me. A little guy like me running for county chair, I couldn't even believe it. But it showed me just how deep the problem runs and how they protect each other. You can see right now how the old guard and the establishment protects each other when you look at the list of endorsements. I vowed back then to take my argument to the people. So while we may have lost that county chair race, we lost that battle. Look at the state of the party where we are now. Look at 94 of 113 voter precincts. Whenever we're in the conventions, when I'm serving in the conventions, and somebody hears I'm from Montgomery County, they treat me like royalty because of the things that we do here in Montgomery County. Gwen Withrow has been an amazing addition as chair of this party, because she came in exactly at the right time. She came from outside the county. She came from Jefferson County here. And they were not able to do all the things to us conservatives locally that they weren't able to do to her what they usually do to us, and then paint her with this evil brush. It was hard for them to do that. So it was funny at the end of that race when I had people from Harris County calling me saying, "John, did you win the county chair race?" And I was like, "Well, it's been hard to do since I wasn't running for it." But Gwen Withrow won. And they said, "Well, everything online, everything we saw printed everywhere, they attacked you." I said, "Yeah, they attacked me the whole time because they're afraid of me. And Gwen is going to do a great job, and she has done a great job." So that's the mentality we have to take to Austin. We need to get the people involved. An educated voter is our friend. Educated voters are harder to manipulate. And it's a heavy lift because people are largely disinterested. And you can see that in the turnout in these elections lately. Real small turnout in these elections. But what I tell people is, we have real small turnout, but if the turnout we have are the people that we're reaching, that is a much more powerful vote, every one that shows up. And that's what drives me. So I'm going to Austin to make a difference. I'm going to Austin to reform the House Republican Caucus in the way it works, so it will work. I'm going to Austin to get them to work in conjunction with the Republican Party of Texas, so we can have accountability for our legislators. I'm going to Austin to save the Republican Party of Texas, because they are losing credibility and power in Texas because of their inconsistent actions as of the last 10 years or so. And I am going to Austin to push for the Republican parties in a meaningful way, so that we no longer have Democrats writing the House rules, Democrats as the parliamentarians, Democrats electing the speaker, and we don't have our legislators gaslighting us for 2 years saying this is the most conservative session ever. I imagine what it could be if we had Republicans actually running it, and I intend to make it so. That's why I'm running.
Okay, great. Thank you very much for coming in, and good luck
Thanks for
in your
having me.
campaign.
God bless you.
Thank you.